The federal government is looking to the slums of India to help improve the lives of people in Australia's remote Indigenous communities. Dr. Kiran Martin is the founder of Indian non-government organisation ASHA, which has helped around 500,000 people in 55 slums in Delhi. Dr. Martin joins us now live from Canberra. Dr. Martin, thank you very much for making time for us tonight. Can I begin by asking you what lessons can be learned from the slums in India and applied here in Australia?
So I'm working among 500,000 slum dwellers in Delhi, and the model that I have developed is one where I'm helping people from slum communities to be able to become residents of proper neighborhoods with much better living conditions. And I think some of the very key lessons that I have drawn from my experience that goes back 27 years is that my approach is an integrated one. So I'm addressing healthcare, I'm addressing land rights, I'm addressing the issue of financial inclusion, and I'm addressing education.
Now, reading through your history and found that you were targeting initially, nearly 30 years ago, women. Why did you take that strategy, that approach?
So the women were the ones in the community that were most disempowered. They were on the margins of society. They didn't have a voice at the community level or at the individual level. They were also the ones that were bearing the brunt of most of the problems. And so I started helping women's associations to get formed in these communities. And it was really quite hard because there was the caste system and there were various other social barriers to the formation of these associations. But when they tasted a little bit of success, it was remarkable, the kind of momentum that was gathered, and when these women got empowered, the entire environment in the slums began to change, and they were responsible for bringing in clean water, bringing in sanitary services, bringing in electricity, bringing in schooling. There was a whole range of services that came in, and these women's groups began to be the primary agents of change in these communities.
So we know that India is not a welfare society as such, and yet why, in your view, is welfare not the answer here in Australia?
Yes. I mean, when I entered the slum communities, there was a sense of complete apathy. There was a sense of complete resignation. There was a sense of fatalism. There was this feeling that this is how we'll have to live forever. This is how we've always lived. And that is also because the messages that had been given to the poor were along the lines that, you know, this is, we will promise you plots of land, we will promise you healthcare, we will promise you education, but nothing really happened, you know, and so their lives continued in that way. And I felt very strongly that unless and until they actually take the leadership of in their communities, and unless they lead from the front and are empowered so that their potential is completely unlocked, this huge hidden potential that was within them is completely unlocked, and there was going to be no change. And India being a democracy, they all have a right to vote, but they weren't really exercising their franchise in an informed manner. They were being herded like cattle to polling booths just before election time. And now that their potential has been unlocked, they've brought about radical changes in their communities. And so a welfarist approach is a very fatalistic approach.
I just wanted to stick on that welfare point, though, because that is the really controversial issue here in Australia, particularly in our remote communities. Are you saying from your previous answer that you think that welfare really disempowers people?
I do. I really believe that. For example, now we instituted a financial inclusion program. These people who were living in the slums didn't even have a bank account. Now, the moment they became bankable, the moment all these thousands and thousands of accounts were opened by the women, they were able to take out loans. They were able to get economically empowered. They were able to become entrepreneurs. They were able to contribute to the economy of the city and of the nation. When young students whom I assisted in sending to university started getting a university education, which is something that they could have never thought about when they were given messages of disempowerment. They entered the whole field of tertiary education, after which they then began to get internship opportunities in big multinational companies, some of them being Australian, such as Rio Tinto or Macquarie Bank. And then they went on to getting jobs. And so they got integrated into the economy of the city and into the country.
So you've obviously had quite a lot of success over the nearly three decades you've been doing this. How in Australia should we measure change and success?
I think the way in which I've measured change and success is, for example, in the area of healthcare, if I'm looking at the disadvantaged communities that I'm working in, the infant mortality rate was 100 for every 1,000 live births, and now it's only at 16. The child mortality rate was 149, and now it's about 17.
So
that
it's about
just
numbers, it's about the facts, is it? Looking at the comparison between the numbers over, a 10-year period, for instance.
That's one of the ways. And then, of course, you look at the quality of life. For example, there's, thousands and thousands of, meters of water lines and, drainage systems and, electricity meters. And, there are 1,200 students from the slums going to university, which is such a huge number.
Dr. Kiran Martin, we could talk about this for a lot longer, but unfortunately that's all we've got time for. Good luck in Canberra and thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me.